Hi Jane. Now we're looking at modules 5 and 6. Can you tell us what these modules are about?
We'll be looking at the TUPE and pensions implications under the contract and essentially how to deal with those.
So what does TUPE stand for?
TUPE stands for Transfer of Undertakings Protection of Employee Regulations 2006. TUPE applies where there's a service provision change, so one organisation undertakes a service, they cease to do so, and another organisation undertakes a similar service. Where that happens, employees will transfer from the original provider to the new provider.
And when should someone read this module?
Organisations should think about the implications of TUPE when they're tendering for a service which may have been undertaken by probation trust staff or another organisation. You should also think about it when you're coming towards the end of a contract because you may well lose staff in a re-tendering exercise, and it's important that organisations think about employment implications from the outset.
So when does TUPE apply?
TUPE will apply where there's a change of activities or services, and I find it really helpful to think about it applying where the employees stick to the services, so you'll be looking at who is undertaking them after the transfer. TUPE would apply to employees and workers, and although it wouldn't apply to genuinely self-employed or volunteers, in practice it's sometimes difficult to ascertain the status, and so you should be aware of this when looking at the implications of TUPE. A good example might be where the outgoing provider currently provides a training service which exclusively looks at employment, whereas you might be bidding for a contract where you're providing a much broader set of training services. The outgoing supplier might argue that TUPE does apply so that their employees transfer, and the new service provider might argue that TUPE doesn't apply because a new service is being provided.
So if the contract doesn't say anything about TUPE, does that mean it doesn't apply?
TUPE will apply regardless of any assurances that you're given that it does or does not apply, and it's vital that you inform your own views in relation to that because TUPE will have wide-ranging implications.
So why should an organisation care about TUPE?
When employees transfer under TUPE, they come across with all of the contractual benefits and rights which they had with their previous employer, including pay, holiday, any union rights, as well as pensions. And the new organisation may find themselves responsible for the actions of the previous employer, which can have wide-ranging financial and reputational implications for the new organisation.
And if TUPE might apply, what does an organisation need to do?
If TUPE applies, both the outgoing and incoming provider are required to provide information to not only staff who will transfer, but also staff who might be affected by the transfer. In addition, it's required to consult with staff if there's going to be changes upon transfer.
And what if after the transfer you find you've got too many staff to run the service?
If redundancies might be necessary, it's really important that you not only consider those employees that have come across on transfer, but also your own employees, and you should take advice.
So if an organisation's thinking about entering a contract, what do they need to do now?
Practically speaking, the most important thing is to seek as much information as possible, as early as possible, including employees who may potentially transfer under TUPE. When you're considering budgets, you should also be aware that the incoming employees may be on more favourable terms, potentially pay or enhanced redundancy, and you should also be aware of the pension provisions.
So what about pensions?
Pensions under TUPE can be particularly complex, and in particular, if you are receiving employees who are ex-probation trust staff, you should look particularly carefully at their pension provisions. And finally, because TUPE is one of the most fact-specific areas of law and each case will turn on its own facts, you really should seek legal advice.